So you've all had the questions, so plenty of time for a bit of a prep and whatever. So let's get into round one. So Phil, so the first question we're asking you guys tonight is which Buck player would you put into the Ring of Honor next and why?
Now, it's interesting you say Buck player. I mean, let's say there's a lot of candidates. James Wilder, for example, there's Dexter Jackson, because he told me that he ought to be up there. And, and there's all sorts of players. And don't forget the owners up there, coaches are up there. So there's a wide variety. But the person I'd like to see on the Ring of Honor is none other than the voice of the Buccaneers, Gene Deckerhoff. Be quite honest. The only problem is with a name like his, it'd occupy half the stadium. So that's probably a good reason why not to. But if ever there's been a constant in all the years, good and bad, through our history, it's him. And I personally think he deserves to be in the Ring of Honor. Just something different, but I just think that. And don't forget Dexter Jackson. He's got to be up there. Because he's the MVP of the Super Bowl, I guess everybody knows,
I mean, that's a great call because, everyone shouts out, all stop up the gut. Even now, everyone knows that. I mean, Spurlock took it back, Santa Maria. I mean, he has actually put so much flavour into Buccaneers.
Oh, yeah. And we've met him in New Orleans, and he's a 100% great guy. However you ever think he is that way. He's kind, he's generous, and he's really outgoing. He's a great guy. I think he deserves it more than anybody.
That's a great call, Phil. Yeah. Good one up. Phil Bushby, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all good. I've got a cold, so I'm going for the sympathy vote with this one, if anyone's scoring it. So I rewatched episode 1 earlier, and I'm surprised that Phil didn't pick Warwick Dunn after he called him out in the first episode. But for me, there's only one guy that deserves to go in next, and I'd pick Hardy Nickerson. I think he came into a bad Bucs team. I think he put a performance up on the field, a real strong performance. He was a massive part of our defense then, but he changed the culture, I think, and he started to turn things around in the locker room, holding people accountable, which I think they weren't at the time, and really kind of started to turn the tide from a bad Bucs team into what eventually became a Super Bowl winner. So for me, I think he's a must-have if we're looking at guys that are in at the minute and guys who kind of could be in around that time frame. He's kind of the next one on the list for me.
I mean, to be a big player in that era of Bucs losing must have been a pretty tough sort of place to be. And the fact that he stuck with it and really, as you say, drove the club onto another level was a pretty awesome thing to do. So again, nice call there. I think that sort of going back into history books, that's a great call for that one. And Steve, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, yeah. When you talk about stuff like Ring of Honor, it's about the same type of thing as when you talk about the Hall of Fame. And when people talk about who goes in the Hall of Fame, you can't tell the story of football without X, Y, Z. In this situation, obviously, you can't tell the Buccaneers story without X, Y, Z. And certainly the names mentioned already, Gene, certainly that's true. Hardy, that's certainly true. But the names I kind of fell on was an unnamed Phil mentioned, which Warwick Dunn, but really there's an extent that you can't tell the history of the city of Tampa without Warwick Dunn, as opposed to the history of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because of course always work off the field. So it came down to 2 really. And one was because what is the thing everybody else knows about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of a certain era? Anyway, even that so much, it became such a joke that it was even put on a graphic when we returned the opening kick of the goodness damn Super Bowl. And that is, we never returned a kick. And in December 2007, we finally managed to do it. So Michael Spurlock was my second option, but my first option is the guy that was the difference in that defense between one that was a dominant defense that got us to the playoffs and a dominant defense that won us a Super Bowl. And that guy is someone that we in the Bucs UK get on rather well with, and that man is Simeon Rice.
Out like a light.
Yeah, good shout.
Yeah, 2 good calls there, Steve. I mean, Michael Spurlock, there were a few of us in the stadium for that game.
Yeah.
And that was just one of the most amazing moments I've ever had in Bucs football. That was just incredible. In fact, I was lucky enough to be there for both his returns, so perhaps I should go more often. And Simeon Rice, I mean, yeah, another great call. Incredibly defensive. I think in many ways quite underrated and not respected for actually everything he did, but an amazing player and, like you say, a good Bucs UK ambassador as well. So yeah, I think we got off to 3 cracking starts there. By all means, put on the chat, those that are listening, what do you think about those calls? Do you agree, disagree? Is there anyone you think that we've missed? As we're going along, let us know what you think. But I think that's a cracking start for the 3 of you there.
Round
So let's
2.
move on to the second question.
Fight.
We're going to Phil Busby this time. So, well, we all know that we've had rows in our secondary this year with men going down. It's been a pretty tough. There's not been many left of the gravediggers about at times already in the first quarter of this season. So we brought in Richard Sherman, but if we hadn't have got our hands on Richard Sherman, who would you have brought in, but not from a sporting background, someone from the entertainment field? Who's your wild card that we bring in to play at cornerback?
This is a really tough one because it's hard to imagine, an entertainer in as a NFL sports star. But for me, I've kind of plumped just for someone big who can maybe be an intimidating presence to line up against and maybe be a bit of a threat going up for a deep ball. And I reckon someone like Vince Vaughn would take no prisoners. The actor Vince Vaughn, he's a big, tall guy. He loves his sports. I think he loves, his Chicago Blackhawks and he loves his sport in general. So I think he'd be quite imposing. I wouldn't want to line up against him as a receiver. Maybe a little bit slow, but we can probably say that about Sherman at the moment. But I think if I'm going up for a deep ball against him, I'm worried about coming off second best. So he'd be my pick. I think someone like that. Good
shout, Steve.
Well, I was tempted to say Conor McGregor, mainly because he's got the same mouth as Richard Sherman. He hasn't been a competitive sportsman for the best part of a decade. But there's also a habit of. I was also tempted to say Vernon Kay because he's a name in entertainment, and we actually know he plays cornerback. But in the habit of having 6 foot plus corners, that is the modern way of the NFL. I'm going to say Richard Osman.
Tough match.
He's a big lad, isn't he?
Yeah, he's going to win jump balls.
And Phil, what about yourself?
Well, I've thought about this long and hard, and really, I don't want to be the devil's advocate of this one, but the obvious choice for me is definitely Keanu Reeves. I mean, there's quite a few reasons. He's actually played in a football in the replacements when he actually he played quarterback, didn't he? Shane Falco. So he's actually played football. And be quite honest, he would soon be up to speed on the complexity of the matrix of our playbook.
Oh, this is a cracker.
Anyway, so if you think about it, he is an intelligent guy. And I definitely think that with his work ethic and his learning, he definitely play hardball, and there would be a chain reaction within our own defense to actually bring them up to his speed. And with his play and his work ethic and his learning and his leadership, he would constantly take our defense to point break. And as for opposing teams, he'd definitely get on their wick.
It's all over.
Phil, what an answer. I like to see a man that does his homework.
I managed to get 10 films in there.
Fantastic effort. That's what we like to see. Fair play to you. There was a great comment that just came in there for... there we go. So John Davis, JD, the ultimate showdown cornerback would have to be the actress Jodie Kramer in character as Villanelle, simply because none of the opposing wide receivers would make it alive past the first quarter.
Dear.
Phil, that was a blinding answer. Fair play to you there on that. That was fantastic. So, right, tonight's game then.
Round 3.
So, each of you, what are your predictions for the game? And who's actually going to be the surprise package tonight? Who's the unexpected player that's actually going to come along and shine? So, Steve, how about that one?
Well, I think one of the big things you can say, I don't think it's a crazy statement to say, that I think that the overall in the game that we'll have 5-1 passing yards to rushing yards, both teams combined, because I think it's safe to say that not even the Pats with Matt Jones are going to even attempt running on us, given both our ability in run D and our ability and our lack of numbers, shall we say, in the pass game. And on the flip side of that, of course, is we can't run the ball for toffee right now. When a 44-year-old cheerleading Russia last week, that's got a serious problem. So that's why I reckon it's going to be we're going to have a serious misnomer between the amount of passing yards on both sides to rushing yards, and that obviously gives us a very high scoring game. So I'm going both sides in the 30s, which is admittedly a very un-Patriots type of game, but that's where I see this one going. As for the key kind of say member of the Buccaneers that hasn't come up as yet, I think it's got to be Antoine Winfield Jr., and not because I was the one banging the trumpet for him to be a top 10 pick even before I knew we were getting him last year, but also because you look at what the Patriots are going to do. Yes, we do have issues at corner, but they've based their entire passing game around their two tight ends, so it's time for somebody, either linebacker or safety, to come up and sort that out one-on-one. And quite frankly, Antoine Winfield Jr. is the guy, because I still don't trust Devin White to cover passes this season right now. So it's got to be, for me, Antoine Winfield Jr. to turn the ball over, because we've not created enough turnovers or sacks, and I think we're more likely to get turnovers than sacks, particularly without JPP this week.
Oh, so I mean, Winfield has been pretty quiet, I think, so far this year compared to last year.
Joe.
But then everybody's been out of target elsewhere, haven't they? Where we've had injuries and that. So yeah, definitely opportunity for him to step up another level this week. Phil Busby, how do you see tonight going?
I think similar to Steve, I think it's going to be a bit of a shootout, because both teams are going to go through the passing game. I don't think, like Steve, I don't think there'll be a lot of run. Maybe we'll surprise everyone and Rojo will break off a 100-yard run like against Carolina last year. Who knows? But I figure it's going to be a passing game. I'm going to go 38-27 to the Bucs. And in terms of who's going to be a breakout player for us, I think the fact that JPP is out another game is a big opportunity for JTS. So Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, I think at some point he's going to land home. And I think against the rookie quarterback like Mac Jones, who doesn't look very mobile, I think is a great opportunity for him to really make his mark. I think against Matt Ryan 2 weeks ago, he nearly got home for a sack. And I think tonight could be the night where he gets at least one, if not two, especially if we get up early and they have to start kind of holding the ball in the pocket a bit longer, trying to look for the deep pass later on. So JTS is my guy tonight. Good
call. I mean, we have struggled, haven't we, to actually get there, so we need that tonight. Phil Jones, how do you see it going?
I think we're going to win as well. I'm not very far off what Phil said. I think it'll be a shootout, and I think we'll score a lot of points. I think it'll be like 38-21 I've written down here. But I don't, do you know what? We've got Richard Sherman in the secondary, and people, well, he's only been there a few days, and he can't have earned the playbook. But when you've got a player who of that caliber, or was that caliber, who has a very vocal on the field, he will lift those young kids. He'll know that he's got a bunch of young kids with inexperienced young kids with him, and he'll lift those kids. And I think he'll be quite an integral part tonight. And I also think, as I said earlier, that it's time for OJ Howard to step up. This is his big chance. There's him and Cameron Brate, who have been totally overshadowed by Gronk, and it's time for those two to step up, especially Howard, to show us what he has got. But I don't think we're still to underestimate the fact as Brady knows their playbook. Brady knows their players, although they have changed quite a bit. He knows their players, knows their playbook, but Belichick knows Brady. But I honestly think that the key tonight will be Brady. But I think that Richard Sherman's going to play a big part, and I think OJ Howard is. Sherman particularly. Sherman particularly.
Excellent.
Mm.
So we're all going for a big shootout tonight. It's
Oh,
going to be a
yeah,
high-scoring game.
Yep.
So
Wants to be 10-7 now.
it's certainly going to be. Let's hope it is a spectacle worth staying up for. It's going to be a long out tonight. And interestingly, yeah, I mean, D has definitely struggled the last couple of weeks in getting to the man. You've all gone for defensive players, and we definitely need them to step up this week. So, yeah.
The thing is, it's like with Sherman. Sherman's, I say, will lift, and JPP lifts our defence. He just does. And without him, you sort of like lose that extra edge. These you've seen it in any sport, that one person who can lift players.
Excellent. Well done, guys. I think
Final
you've come up
round.
with 3 rounds of really good answers there. So now we get to the fun one, defend the indefensible. If you don't know this question, it's coming your way. So it says they're going to put it each of you your own question, and you've got to come back and defend that question. So Phil Busby, your one then to start us off at a minute. So Jets are underrated and clearly heading for this year's Super Bowl.
Well, I think if we look at last year's Super Bowl champions, as we well know, we had a bit of a ropey start with the Saints game and a couple of bad games later on through the season, thinking of the Bears as well. And I think the Jets are just lulling people into a false sense of security. I think if you look at their division, the Patriots are going to lose tonight and be 1-3. The Dolphins don't look very good, and the Bills have been a little bit hit and miss so far this season. So I think the Jets are just trying to lull them into a false sense of security, and they're going to come on strong and go on a tear. As we write this, they're beating the Tennessee Titans, I believe. Zach Wilson is kind of getting everybody to worry about their running game by throwing loads of interceptions. So people aren't going to worry about defending the pass, and then he's just going to switch it on and throw touchdown after touchdown, from next week, I think. So I can definitely see them making the Super Bowl. Who knows? They may even go on and win it.
Oh, I love that. I nearly believed you for a nanosecond there. Steve, then, up to you. So forget offense and defense. Special teams are the most important part of NFL football.
Yeah, definitely. I'll tell you, here's one story for you. Who is one of the only sides in 2010, there was one side ranked number 1 for offense and number 1 for defense. The San Diego Chargers. Do you know what happened to them? They didn't make the playoffs. Do you know why? Because, as we all know, the San Diego Chargers were awful at special teams. They found incredible ways for their special teams to lose games that season, both through kick returns being returned, through missed kicks, because San Diego Chargers have missed kicks even worse than us for the last 20 years, as we well know. I say as well, we know. Imagine if everyone post Matt Bryant had been able to kick like Matt Bryant, we'd have had about at least 10, 15 more wins, you'd imagine, than we'd have had over the last decade. Quite honestly, special teams is the most underrated part of the game, and as I said, the San Diego Chargers story proves it. You can have number 1 offense, number 1 defense, and you can have missed the playoffs if you have the 32nd ranked special teams.
Well done, Steve. Great answer, great knowledge there.
Well,
So, Mr.
in.
Jones, here you go. Breathe in. You're giving out. Right. So, Phil, this is a special for you. So, obviously, you've had some amazing players at Man United. Beckham, Law, Best, Ronaldo's back now. But surely the greatest player that you've ever seen is Eric Cantona, particularly playing in a Leeds shirt.
Well, you're absolutely correct. Eric Cantona was a shadow of himself when he came to Manchester United. He was just a god at Leeds, and nothing would ever beat the fact that he was with a superb team in Leeds United, and he rose to the occasion like the character he was. And unfortunately, with Manchester United, he came to a club that wasn't up there with Leeds, and his form dropped. And it was all very easy for it to see. And he was an icon, and he was a great player, but he never reproduced what he did at Leeds United.
Well done, Phil. Good
That
effort
was
there,
nice.
mate. Well done, everyone. I thought that was.
I think Phil needs to lie
Dan
down
James,
now.
Daniel James is going to repay the favour tenfold for Leeds.
Pete, will you ever forgive me?
Well done, everyone. I think that was a great effort. I think round of applause for everyone's responses. So we've got the chat open. Put in your comments. Everyone tell us who you think won this evening's battle.
It's all over.
I think it's only going one way at the minute. I just think for his incredible response to the what was a pretty tough second question, I think we've got to give it to El Capitano, Phil Jones
Hey.
tonight.
Yeah,
I
that was a
think
good
was a
answer.
stunning answer that I think
Can't go against
was,
that.
Yeah.
anyone, so.
Thanks, lads. Cheers. Thanks very
Brilliant.
much.
I just think well done, everyone. Thanks for taking part. That was a great show.
Yeah, it was good
We
fun.
look forward to doing another run soon.
Yeah.
Well done, everyone.
Cheers, guys.